It's going.
Okay.
Hit the button.
Oh, yeah. We did our double key click click.
The nuclear football.
Yeah.
I love it. It's beginning. DEF CON. We're going to DEF CON 3 podcast.
Okay. Well, you're all hot. You're all warm.
I suppose I am.
What's on your mind?
Today's the title and theme: make Assyria great again.
Oh, I don't have my maps.
Eh.
What's Assyria?
Northern Iraq, essentially. The Nineveh Triangle. It's on the Tigris. It was basically it's the part. It's the southern edge of where you can still grow wheat and barley by rain. So north of Assyria, you can grow. It's plenty of rainfall. That's actually where the headwaters of Mesopotamia are, the Tigris and Euphrates. Armenia, plenty of grain growing there. It's actually, and it's high elevation, so you get snow in the winter, and then you get less and less rain the farther south you go. And Assyria is basically the lower limit of that. So you can still grow grain on a normal year. On the bad years, if there's drought, you can't. But south of Assyria, you have to have irrigation.
Okay.
So all those fields, those rich fields of wheat in Babylon and Sumer, even south of Babylon, that all depends entirely.
Engineering.
Yeah. It doesn't rain very much. It does do some rain. It's not like Egypt. It's not, desiccated. But if you're going to, you could throw all the wheat you want on the ground and it's not going to grow much unless you irrigate it. So it really influenced the nature of those two civilizations. They're in very close contact, but you don't have the massive irrigation schemes that Babylon has and in the south.
They're contemporary.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think our very first episode was about Assyria and Babylon and how they were cousins, siblings, you might say, who never quite got along. They had a hell of a long sibling rivalry. But, one of the, I mean, what's so strange about Assyria is we really only remember the last stage of its empire building when it really went to town, you might say, and conquered the entire ancient world. But it had 2,000 years of history before that. And in their middle period, they were actually known as merchants. They weren't known as being very militaristic. And they had merchant colonies in eastern Turkey today, way up, across the mountains, where they were trading obsidian and cloth and stuff. Karuns, they were called. They were these trading colonies, like a city within a city, like the Assyrian quarter. And they
cool.
They connected the Anatolian peninsula to the rest of Mesopotamia. So they weren't known as being aggressive at all. They were, in fact, very polite.
You had a Assyria town in Assyria market in your towns, maybe.
Yeah, and they were the middlemen. They were the ones connecting everybody. They would get lapis lazuli from way the hell east, Afghanistan, the same place it still comes from, and they would be getting it to Egypt. They were right there, smack dab in the middle, the trading routes north and south and east and west. And so you have
sounds like a profitable place to be if you can maintain that.
Yeah. Another one was tar, bitumen, because the oil fields, it seeps up and it's very valuable, for waterproofing stuff. Glue is, it's so it was a big connected world. And the Assyrians did not have a reputation for being ferocious. It was they were known as being the merchants, and then the Bronze Age collapse happened and they survived. They shrank to this core nucleus right around Nineveh, Ashur, and Arbela, the modern day. What is it? I can see the city right now. It's in Kurdistan today. That one that's still inhabited. Erbil, Erbil. It's the same name. It's still there. It shrank to that core during the Bronze Age collapse. This is around 1200 BC, and then it was only after the end of that Dark Age, starting around 900 BC, they expanded in all directions for 300 years. And that's when they became ferocious.
Okay, so the Bronze Age collapse sort of requires them to shrink up and be lean.
Yeah.
And then what allows them to blow out again?
Right. Okay. Well, the thing to realize.
How do you go from like the leanest version of yourself? We were bebopping along.
Yeah.
But then calamity.
Yeah. So think of it this. So before the Bronze Age collapse, you have the glorious Bronze Age. This is when the Egyptian Empire goes all the way up to Syria. The entire Levant is controlled by Egypt. There are no Jews at this point. There's no Israel. The Hittites control most of Anatolia. The Mycenaeans are in Greece. This is Agamemnon. The Babylonians are very powerful and prosperous. Elam in southern Persia today. And the Minoans.
So you got Hittites, Elamites,
Egyptians, Mycenaeans, yeah. And we have records. Like there are Hittite records in cuneiform of Greek names. Like we think, like, hey, is that Menelaus? I'm not joking. It's incredible. The Bronze Age collapse was a shrinking and a disintegration of almost all of that. So at the end of the Bronze Age collapse, there's no Mycenae. The Hittites have disintegrated, and there's Neo-Hittite city-states, Carchemish in southern Turkey today, like Syria. And the only ones that survive are Egypt, Babylon, and Assyria.
As far as like well-established civilizations, or do we say empires?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So they're Neo-Hittite city-states, but no Hittite empire anymore.
Yeah. Gotcha. And so you had. And this is obviously is not me, but it's kind of, people call it the first globalization. You have Mycenae, you have Egyptian artifacts in Mycenae, there are the little scarabs with cartouches from pharaohs, right? You have trade networks from Afghanistan and the Indus River Valley all the way to Greece and Crete and Egypt. It's just very interspread, and they all know each other. The Club of Great Powers, that pharaohs are sending letters to kings in Babylon and vice versa. They're giving each other gifts. International politics, there was a.
I'm sure there's like conflict and also suffering among the lower classes, but
absolutely slavery.
If you wanted to be silly, you could say like it's good for everybody right now.
It was better for the average person, especially from what came later. So this glorious Bronze Age, this Golden Age, this is Ramesses fighting the Hittites at the Battle of Kadesh. This is Assyrian merchants swapping back and forth. This is building ziggurats, in Babylon. And then it collapsed very badly in a very short period of time. So 1200, that world exists. 1100, it pretty much doesn't.
That's pretty quick.
Yeah, it is. And maybe it started in Mycenaean Greece. It might have been a warrior class that started this snowball effect.
Which was?
Burning and looting almost every palace and major city. So the loss of writing systems, the loss of international trade, the localization of everything.
What was the mechanism of the collapse, though?
Roving bands.
What's the underlying cause? Is that a dumb question? Do we all know why the Bronze Age collapse happened, and I just haven't?
One guy theorizes, and this is a serious theory, that maybe the Trojan War unmoored. So
this isn't even settled.
Yeah.
We know that there was a Bronze Age collapse, but we aren't like, peak oil or whatever.
Right. Hey, yeah. It's kind of like asking, why did the Germanic tribes get on the move for the late Roman period? Maybe the Huns had something to do with it, and it started a domino effect. And once it gets going, once everybody's unmoored,
it's got sort of its own inertia or something.
It does, because if you have this class of people who suddenly have no way of making a living except by burning and looting, they're going to keep doing that like a traveling wave, like a fire.
But it's not like we have some foolproof ironclad economic theory or material theory for exactly why this collapse happened.
Right. Because the written records are so patchy, we don't know. And we never will.
Okay.
Until we invent time machines.
Sweet.
So one guy said, well, the Trojan War happened. You know, obviously Achilles was not dipped into the river Styx or whatever it was, but maybe a long siege on the Dardanelles of this city that was intercepting grain shipments and, you know, skimming a little off the top, a city called Ilium, Troy. The Mycenaean Greeks might have put together a coalition under a king named Agamemnon, and it was a really long siege that drained a lot of the wealth out of an unsettled Mycenaean civilization. They win and they come back, and now you have a class of warriors and a shattered society and economic system, and the trade networks are starting to break apart.
And then that domino
effect, yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it dominoes, and
now you've got these Mycenaeans on the move instead of the Germanic tribes on the move or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. And I mean, it is like every Mycenaean center is abandoned except for maybe Athens. Pylos, sacked and burned so badly that it baked all the cuneiform clay tablets, so we have the record of the last few years. And one of the records is like, for Zeus, we're sacrificing one man.
Well,
and for Hera, one woman. They were so desperate and afraid something's happening, somebody's coming, and they're resorting to human sacrifice to try to, which
wasn't common practice at the time.
No, it's like going way back. It'd
right.
be as if
they were desperate.
Yes. Yeah, it'd be like Christians so desperate they're nailing people to a cross today because they know some ravening army is coming. They can see the smoke clouds on the horizon. Pylos, burned, abandoned, sacked, never reoccupied,
canceled.
Mycenae, canceled. Orchomenos, Gla, all of them.
Not Gla.
Gla. I love Gla. Just
that's name. A Klingon, early Klingon.
Exactly,
city.
Right? So, 1200, Egypt is a glorious civilization. There's still the memory of Ramesses the Great. Mycenae is beginning to fall apart, but it's still there. The Hittites are still there. At 1100, there's no Hittite king. Hattushas has been sacked and burned by the Kazka. And yeah, the only ones that survived kind of because they had a core they could shrink back to. But Assyria turns into like this little fortress, this tiny little triangle. It used to have these big trade networks. Not anymore. There's still a king in Ashur, but he's doing his very best to stave off everybody. It's just playing defense. Babylon, same. So at the end of it, Babylon,
survive.
Assyria and Elam, they're about the only ones left. The Hittite Empire never comes back. Make Hattushas great again. They ruled from the Aegean to the, Taurus Mountains. And down into northern Syria. They fought the Egyptians. They fought the Mitanni. They fought the Assyrians. Everybody's fight. There's always conflict. They fought the Mycenaeans. We have records of maybe Mycenaean names out of the fucking Iliad. And we're like, that sounds a lot like Menelaus. And they're gone. They are gone. You can't get the kingship back. You go from being part of a broad international network, and even within your nation, it's super connected to like, this is our village. We can't go more than 5 miles away. There are bandits in the hills.
Right. So I imagine you have to sort of cut loose a lot of your satellite. I mean, if your core shrinks, then you're just giving up a lot of what used to be member cities of the Assyrian Empire are now just independent. And
we have actually, believe it or not,
have to fend for themselves, basically, with no sort of central bureaucratic support or whatever.
What's interesting about Assyria is they had an ideology of rulership and empire that was extremely moralistic and uncompromising. And so it was like, if you were ever a part of Assyria, you're not allowed out, right? So even though when they shrank back into their core and there's a dark age for like 200 years. But kept they kept their writing system, and they kept the cultural memory of like, oh yeah, you used to be a part of Assyria. Tukulti Ninurta conquered you 350 years ago. We know it's been a while. You still have to send us tribute. We understand things fell apart, but you're never not a part of Assyria once you are. It's a one-way ratchet.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's still
uncompromising.
I thought it was usually sort of some sort of contract when it comes to tribute. You expect, I don't know, protection and roads, or
Yeah, which the Assyrians were glad to provide, but there was an extremely uncompromising cultural attitude in the Assyrian worldview that seems almost monotheistic. Like, if you're a part of Assyria, or you were ever a vassal to Assyria, you're always a vassal. Even if we didn't collect the tribute during that 100 years, you still owe. It's very interesting how they went from being kind of more loosey-goosey merchants, it seems. So
that's going to be part of their expansion post Dark Age, is reclaiming what they believe is theirs.
Yes,
because it has been.
Yeah, and that's how it started. They would be like, "Hey, Carchemish, you sent us tribute 300 years ago. We're back."
So to them, maybe in like a spiritual storytelling, to them it's just reclaiming what used to be part of the empire, but it's going to look a lot like conquering.
Yeah, and that's how it went, and that's the way to think about it too. Like, I know we keep returning to this, but if it has been 300 years since the last time Assyria actually did rule it in a practical way, nobody remembers it.
Right.
But it's a story they told. They still had the name. It was like, Carchemish did, send tribute, and so therefore it has to again. And it's like, dude, that was your great-great-great-great-grandfather. You've never even been there. You don't know what it's like. But the name is there on the cuneiform tablet. It's kind of depressing.
And the last time one of your tax collectors was there was 3 generations ago or whatever.
Or more.
Yeah.
Yeah, truly.
It's sort of a big ask when you show up.
Yeah. Yeah, big ask. Like, we've been ruling ourselves for a long time. We have our own...
Get the heck out of here, broskies.
But the Assyrians did not see it that way. Yeah. So it was at the end of that dark age. Let's say, shorthand, let's say 1100 to 900 is the darkest of the dark age.
Okay.
And this is maybe also when folk heroes like Theseus and others are futzing around in Greece. Whoa. Theseus was maybe just a warlord. And like, if you think about Theseus, like, he has to make a trip from like an itty-bitty trip. It's like Argos to Corinth or something, just a little bit around the isthmus, and it's full of bandits and monsters, right? And he makes his way down to Athens. Like, in the Greek Dark Age, it was very dark, 1100 to 900. Like, no writing. There is no writing. There's like no roads, and the best you're going to get is like an itty-bitty city-state on top of an acropolis, right? That can maybe defend its home territory, but it is fucking dark. Like, and there's this blind dude who is putting together some of these folk songs that have sort of been held on to, of this very dim memory, half remembered, and his name is Homer. Right?
Now, okay, so what happens to writing systems during this
Greece.
Dark Age?
Yeah,
they lose writing.
Gone.
So anything from before that ends up, anything pre-11, 11th century BC that we know about now, post-9th century BC, was by its very nature of the product of an oral tradition. It might have...
Yes and no, because we did... So the Greeks at the time, if it's 900 BC... the former walls of Mycenae might be part of your sheep pen, right? And you might see these stones on the ground that have these weird markings on them. I can't fucking read them. We can read those. So it's both. We have the little dim memories of the oral tradition.
Right.
But then we also have the written records.
So if it's us, well, we
Yeah.
we know what they said.
Yeah,
But
it's the we in that
if
sense.
it's a 9th century
Mm-hmm.
Mycenaean or Greek,
Yep.
and they're hearing about someone from before the 11th
Yeah.
century,
It's
then
oral.
it's
Yeah.
neat.
And so
What you're gonna get, I mean, we all obviously it doesn't even bear or need said, but the transformation, so much, especially for in that length of time, even though it's not that all that long, 200 years. But
right.
if it's entirely oral, like obviously, Ted went to the grocery store in 11th, in the year 1100, and by you're hearing the song 200 years later,
Yeah.
Fred has done some crazy stuff.
Yeah. No, and that's exactly what it is. They because we have even into the modern era in some very, wild and woolly parts of the world, you have traveling minstrels.
Mhm.
And so they look at how they work and how they make their songs. And, shit. I mean, the Viking sagas are very much like that. These very dimly remembered and then folk hero types. And there probably was a guy named Bolvi or Beowulf who did some shit. And then it slowly turns into the written records, and and you can see how the song becomes written down, and you can also see what real historical events probably were the sources of those sorts of
right.
things.
This is a very silly, but
Yeah.
they made a basic. I don't know if they made a cartoon, Castlevania cartoon.
Right.
And there's a group of people in the Castlevania cartoon called the Speakers, and they're sort of like earthy and they're travelers, but they also like abhor the written record.
Oh, yeah.
Because they think stories should be alive and oral entirely. But it's kind of interesting because there's some romance to that idea, right?
Right.
Oh, it's more true and it's less true. It's more true and it's an oral living tradition, but also books are cool,
Yeah.
So in the universe of that show, you've got this character who's from that culture, but then you've got this other character who has a family dynastic, fantastic library,
right,
of knowledge in books.
Yeah. I mean, I would. Another good example of that are the stories of the early Roman heroes, and of the Marcus Furiosa and others. They do amazing feats for Rome. And historians make the point, like, those guys certainly existed. They probably didn't actually fend off a bridge by themselves against the Celtic hordes. But for the Romans, it almost didn't matter if it was true or not. You believed in them. Not literally true. I didn't have to believe them. I have to believe in them.
Right.
Yeah.
The historical truth isn't.
Yeah.
What? That's the wrong question.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the movie The Patriot. The American movie The Patriot with Mel Gibson. It's garbage, like it's myth. It's pure myth, 100%. And there it is, ready-made packaged for a right-wing audience, or like it makes you more right-wing as you watch it, and that's the point.
Cool. I don't think I've seen it, but like if that's true, then good on it.
Yeah,
and in a way,
it's
like
pure propaganda.
But I respect effective propaganda. And
yeah, no, it's what it is. Don't
sorry,
even talk about Braveheart.
It just makes me think of like I was reading. I'm nothing of a mouse collar, but I was preparing or thinking about trying to write a capstone.
Oh.
And I was thinking about music and Maoism, and so I found some speeches he gave to music workers or art workers.
Yeah.
But in the speeches is this very like at the core of the ideology was sort of this utilitarian aspect to art. Like, yeah, do write music and do be a painter, but your paintings and your songs should do something.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to be specific and tell you what they should do. They should further my cause. But even that notion is interesting. Like, it's not art for art's sake. It needs to have a utilitarian end. It should do something. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not being a Mel Gibson apologist, but
well,
I respect well executed.
Yeah, no, there's something to admire in it. It's unfortunate when it's, or something, a way that I don't see things
Right,
true
right.
at all. But if you were a Greek hearing stories, you had a much more real reason to say, the good old days, if you're a Greek living in the Dark Ages, even though you have no memory of it. I mean, their diet was so bad. Like, we don't like, the American view kind of conflates Greeks and Romans, like they just kind of blend together at the edges. Greeks hardly ate seafood. You ate mostly barley. Like, you had wine and you had olive oil and you had fucking barley and maybe some wheat, and maybe once or twice a year you ate meat.
Did you make a meal?
Yeah,
of the
crappy
barley.
Stuff. Yeah, you cooked it up. It was kind of a porridge. I mean, they were
just eating gruel every day.
Oh, it was a terrible lifestyle, and you're trying to bang out a living on fucking rocky Greek soil, like, very bad. And in the Dark Age, like, and that's in like the classical age, we have an idea because that's written down. We know what the Athenian diet was like during the democracy. Well, 500 years before that, are you fucking kidding me? Like, you did not have an ox, probably. You had to pay your neighbor. It was a very dark age. And that was, like, I assume the Assyrian diet was probably a lot better. But so around 900 BC, the dust has settled. And there's a lot of new people who weren't there before. And here's a hard archaeological fact. It's amazing. The Philistines from the Bible were almost certainly Mycenaean Greeks who were settled there by a pharaoh after they failed in an invasion of Egypt.
Whoa.
Yeah. Ramesses III fought off the sea peoples. This is in like 1187, This coalition of barbarians coming over the sea in boats is trying to fucking take Egypt, because that's how chaotic things are. Egypt is only the Nile Valley. They have nothing of their old empire, right? Ramesses defeats them and settles them as a buffer zone in southern Canaan.
That's a good move.
Gaza area.
It's always nice to have a buffer zone.
Yeah. And if you look at the pottery and the archaeological artifacts of some of those Pentapolis of the Philistines, you look at the actual archaeology and it's Mycenaean Greek.
Wow.
They have, but they're completely disconnected from their homeland. So one guy I've listened to, he said, think about it this way. When David fought Goliath, Goliath might have been a great-great-great-grandson of a guy who fought in the Trojan War. No shit. So around 900 BC, the dust is settled, trade is starting, things like you can rebuild your cities.
Trade between whom?
Oh, humans are an economic species. I want gold. I want
so
nice
not
things.
only
Obsidian.
Between Assyria, Babylon, and Elam, but between any villages or cities that have put themselves together or remain, but that are no longer part of an empire.
Yeah, a good way to build legitimacy for a local government is to take out the bandits that are preventing trade. They interdict all the trade. Well, I'm going to put together a militia. We're going to have some spears and shields. And we're going to go take out those bandits. And now the wagons are going back and forth again.
That's something.
They have olive oil. We need grain,
That's something. Well, I should just speak for myself, but it's something I've come to realize, like, even though we sort of see it in movies a little bit, like, we as modern humans do not really understand the highwayman.
Yep, we don't.
The bandit.
Yep.
The actual historical people that would waylay you on your 15-mile journey from one village to another, or waylay a trade thing, caravan, or whatever.
It's a real deal, and it really matters. And when it happens, it kind of happens all at once. And an individual person can, at that point, when it starts, an individual can remember, oh yeah, you used to just go from A to B, and now you can't. You can't. They will catch you. There's no way around this. There's only one way over the mountain.
Right.
There's bandits in the mountains. What the fuck am I supposed to do?
And it's possible they won't kill you, but you're not going to make it over there with your stuff.
They captured my son. not only did they get the shipment of ivory or whatever it is, but they captured my son and I had to ransom him. And then they sent me back his hands. And then I had to ransom them again.
Is this related to what you said about someone saying this was the first globalized?
Yeah,
like that's
we're almost
talking about the same thing.
Yeah, you had ships going from Egypt, taking a stop at Cyprus, taking a stop at Crete, and then trading at Mycenae, and then loading up at Mycenae, and then going back. That's gone. It's gone.
Can't happen if every third trader, whether they're
a pirate.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It doesn't happen.
You're living in a different world if that's the case.
Yeah. Oh, sure, they've got plenty of gold in Mycenae that they're happy to pay for whatever papyrus that Egypt has, or grain. Yeah, I'd love to get it to them, but why on earth would I send grain to disappear? And because I know it's going to disappear, right? So that globalized world is gone during the Dark Ages. Around 900, the dust starts settling, and it's like, oh, yeah, they took out the bandits, so I had this really lucrative spice trade or whatever, you know. I took some bitumen down
like
into
step
Elam.
One is take out the bandits.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Almost right.
Well, and the thing is crime during collapse, crime emerges with warfare, and then it unmerges on the other end.
Right.
Right. It wheels together. So like, these invading hordes of barbarians, is it a military operation, or are they all bandits, or does it kind of become both, you know? And since we can't pay our military, since the economy is collapsed, they're going to join the bandits.
It's only after the dust is settled where you can even draw the line.
Yes. What's the difference between 500 bandits and 500
soldiers? Yeah.
If they're going to burn, sack, and loot, no matter what.
Which they will.
Yep. And if it's your own military that you can't pay, yeah, people want to be good people, but you need to fucking pay me. And I'm going to take it. So what's the difference between taking my legitimate pay and looting a city? There's no difference. The dust is settling around 900, and last men standing. Egypt, Babylon, Assyria, Elam. And then there's these goofy city-states, and, you know, there's these people called Israel. They got founded around 1000 BC during the height of the Dark Age, believe it or not. They look around.
Where'd they come from?
There was an exodus, maybe, but it might have been as few as 40 people escaping out of Egypt. The Canaanites who probably came to Egypt and then left when it was falling apart during the Bronze Age collapse, went through the Sinai and came out of the eastern desert and said, oh, this land is ours again, and fought the Philistines, who were Mycenaeans, were settled there by the Egyptians. Egypt ruled the Levant, basically from Syria, basically Antioch today, like that, Syria on the Mediterranean, the entire thing, for almost 500 years. There's no Israel during that time. Jerusalem is a small settlement on a hill. So Israel, they came out, they were semi-pastoralists who somehow managed to make it through the Sinai and then came back and had this book and series of rules that told them that Israel was theirs.
Pretty sick book.
Yeah, pretty neat.
I mean, again, powerful.
Yeah, it's a powerful book. It's more powerful than... Ideas are more powerful than people.
Although, again, like, hardly even a book. It's sort of a collection of...
Mishmash stitched together.
Written versions of oral...
Kind of like
of the oral tradition, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. That's exactly what it was. Yeah. Like Moses is an Egyptian name. Moses from, Thothmoses, from Moses, born of. So it's all right there, to get it into the modern era.
But it's a crazy mixtape to put together.
It is. It is. And if you think about it, people who are still enthralled by that book, they don't believe it literally, they believe in it. They read a story of Ruth or Esther or Judges or Samson or something, and it's like, is this literally true or not? Is this history or not? Well, it's
the wrong question.
It's the wrong question. It's how the story transforms me if I read it enough. It makes me a Christian, or it makes me a Jew. You're a certain type of person, right? Because otherwise, what the fuck? We have other hero stories all over the place. There are so many Samsons of like the conquering hero, you know. I mean, look at the Viking sagas. There's full of them. So the dust settles slowly within a person's lifetime. But from the walls of Ashur, you can look out if you're the king or the high priest and go, oh, it's time to maybe bring back the good old days. And they start conquering and unifying. Not as a grand plan. In the long run, there are no grand plans. They didn't say...
You do what you can when you can.
Yeah, and you approach the world with the stories and norms that you are used to.
That you've inherited.
Yeah.
Oh,
you don't say, oh, 2,000 years from now, people are going to call... I'm wrong. 3,000 years from now, people are going to call what just happened the Bronze Age collapse. We just called it the shitty times. And they're going to go, oh, this was the start of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, but we just call it
the Assyrian Empire.
Yeah, we just call it putting things back together, you know. But now there's iron, you know, technology. It's easier to plow your fields.
Is this part of what allows them to get back on the horse?
No.
I mean, what are the circumstances between living through or in a dark age and then having enough excess energy and stability to hire militias or deputies or get a posse together to take care of the bandits, and then after that start the trade again, and then after that actually expand and reconquer cities? Where's the extra stuff
Juice.
Come from?
Yeah, well, you're not wrong, but in a way that's not the right question. No, that's fair. You know what? Another thing that changed
because
during
50 years ago we didn't have enough stuff, and now we're
population density can go up if you can plow with iron plowshares instead of I don't even think they use bronze plowshares.
Right.
Wood.
So is it?
Partly.
Okay.
But you have to keep in mind it's not like the Assyrians had iron and other people didn't.
Right.
Everybody has iron.
Right.
Except for Egypt. Egypt doesn't have enough trees to do a lot of the smelting necessary for iron. They never had enough.
But if part of the original problem, which we haven't decided it is, but if part of the original problem is there are some folks out there who either don't have a job to do or a place to live. Right. If you have more efficient technology, you can feed and house more people.
Yeah.
So that can mitigate some of whatever the problem might have been when the Philistines were trying to invade Egypt or whatever.
It's partly that because it also just context matters. You know, like you can't just reset. Oh yeah, you know, once the invaders are there and you can't do anything about it because they're militarily stronger than you, you can't put it back together. Now there's 100,000 people who you have to deal with, and that is why France is France today, because of the Franks who crossed the Rhine. It wasn't the first time they crossed the Rhine. It was about the last time they crossed the Rhine.
Even if things could be working, even if the machine is semi-healthy, if the machine is broken by a historical circumstance or contextual coincidence, then it's a broken machine one way or the other. Yeah. Even if it could have run along.
Yes. Yeah. And, you know, it's just that simple to a certain extent. Like, wouldn't it be nice if all the barbarians were still north of the Rhine and Danube? Whoops. Not so much. And now you can't control their access. And so now it's a porous border, and you better figure out what you're going to do, Rome. Oh, wait. They rule you now. And it's not even a cohesive they. Assyria managed to hold on to its borders during that period. Another thing that happened, a difference between the Bronze Age and the beginning of the Iron Age, around 1000 BC, the dromedary camel is domesticated and becomes widespread. Now you can cross the desert in caravans.
Ooh, so two technological advances.
Yeah.
Around the same time.
Roughly, yeah. Iron is old. It becomes widespread during and after the Bronze Age collapse. So, honest to God, the Egyptians at the height of their empire, they have bronze and they are ruling a huge empire. They conquered Nubia too, to the south, and integrated it. 400 years, not too shabby, but they're doing it with bronze spear points and arrowheads. They didn't have much iron. It was meteoric at best. But now you have iron technology all over the place, and so swords are quite a bit less brittle. And you can equip a full military with all iron-tipped spears. That's not bad at all, Pretty good. You've got iron in Greece.
And you can get more food out of the ground with less work.
I think so, yeah.
Is that true?
I think the more metal you have available for your farmers, the better it is. For shearing sheep. For anything, for reaping grain. It's far better to have a iron sickle than a flint-napped sickle. You get more bang for the buck, and so therefore there's more bucks going around, more excess energy. We always go into this. But yeah, it does. I think it does. There's major improvements, even though they grow a lot of grain in Babylon. If you irrigate and you flood and plow, I think it might be something of a toss-up in some regions. But in Assyria, it's not irrigation. So I assume the population probably went up. That's an assumption based on nothing. Just nothing more than feeling. So they look around and they start reasserting themselves. And this starts a process of militarization and concentration of power more and more into the personhood and institution of the king that traps them. It's kind of irreversible because once you start just militarily conquering people and putting them under, in some ways, the absolute control of a king, they're not trying to put together, you can't back out of that very easily. They created more enemies the more they conquered. Once you go down that path of pure military conquest and using reprisals and brutality to put people down, it kind of forever dominates your destiny.
You have to keep
doing it.
And more.
Yeah. Like if
it's a positive feedback loop, and eventually you might run out of soldiers or brutality.
Yeah, you can. Like if enslaving all your young men, the city that revolted didn't do it, well, now we have to kill them all. And one generation later, we might have to skin them all alive. And the Assyrians, it seems that they started relying on their army to solve all their problems. And they built the most astoundingly superb and advanced military of its time. Like, goddamn. Other
of its time around
800 to 600 BC.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Like, there was a king, he usurped the throne, I'm pretty sure, Shamshi-Adad V. Shamshi-Adad, no, that's a different guy. Tiglath-Pileser. Armies at that point tended to be seasonal. It was a militia of farmers that you put together after they were done work.
When they weren't farming.
Yeah, no, straight up.
So war and conflict are seasonal at this point. Yeah.
Just like the early Roman army, it's a militia, and so it's like, and you don't and you had better have all your young men of military age and ability busy at work, because the margin of survival, the oomph, the bang you're getting for your buck is so marginal when everything is done by hand.
Yeah, you can't have full-time soldiers because
you can't afford
people starve.
Yes, you don't have enough excess food to feed a guy to stand on the wall.
Right.
To guard it, right? And this is part of the reason why those dark ages were so dark, because at that moment of flame looking down, they're burning tinder. They're burning just the very effervescent. How much excess productivity did Mycenaean Bronze Age civilization have? Not very much. So when those sea peoples, when those roving bandits went through and burned that excess energy, there was nothing left. Poof, ash. And there's nothing behind, literally. If there's a bit more excess, you can maybe afford to pay 10 men who could be working to do nothing but guard.
Patrol the walls.
And be good soldiers. They better be better soldiers. So there was, I think it's Tiglath-Pileser. They reached the limits of what they could do with their militia-style armies, essentially. It was like, so in like the 800s, Assyria has expanded into pretty much all of northern Mesopotamia. Like they're fighting Armenia, which at the time was Urartu. We call it Armenia now. And everybody else. They're always fighting Babylon. I mean, Jesus Christ. It was like a 300-year adversarial love-hate relationship. But they kind of reached the limit of what they could do with a militia army, because it's going to disband every planting season and every fucking harvest season. So this city revolted. We got to put together somebody to put it down. They're all in the fields. It's harvest time. What the fuck are you going to do? Are you going to harvest your grain and eat in the winter, or are you going to go put down this revolt? You don't get both. This one king has all these innovations where he puts together a standing military. Like, okay,
figures out how to use the efficiencies and excess energies of his civilization to pay some dudes to be soldiers.
He doesn't pay them.
Not pay. Yeah, keep some dudes. Feed some dudes to be soldiers.
Yeah. And they have, I swear to God, detailed records of like the needs of the barracks. Like, this is how many sheep a day the barracks in Nineveh eat, and we have those records. We have full what is it when you bills of sale?
Yeah, invoice or whatever.
Invoice, that's the word I was looking. We have invoices of barracks from 700s BC,
like of the state purchasing sheep from farmers or ranchers,
and barley and the wheat and how much beer they needed. It's incredible how detailed it is.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, dude, you've got to feed 5,000 men a day.
Is this all cuneiform tablet?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Cuneiform, remember, is a script, not a language. So it's cuneiform, the dots and dashes, the wedges. Wedges, but it's in Assyrian, not Babylonian.
Interesting.
Different languages. They're cousin languages. And, we have cuneiform in the Hittites, before this, Neo-Assyrians kept very good records, and they had like 11 different languages in cuneiform. It's really something. Or Aramaean, others.
So is it, never mind. Yeah. We don't need to talk about cuneiform. But.
Right. So, but here's the thing. So he puts together a standing military, and it is hands down, without question, the most advanced and powerful army that the ancient world has ever seen.
Does that mean it's the most advanced and powerful army the world had ever seen?
I would
up
say
to
yes.
that point.
I would say it's more advanced than Chinese militaries at the same time. Like this is the warring states spring and autumn period in China, and they're not nearly as organized as the Assyrian army. Any Assyrian army, I would say, would probably have defeated any army that warring state could have put together. It's incredible. They have chariots, they have phalanxes, they have slingers, they have archers, they have excellent siege capacity. They have heavy artillery for its time, big like crossbow style bolts, ballista type stuff.
Oh yeah.
They have and they sometimes fight these Scythians or Cimmerians who are steppe nomads who are fighting without stirrups or high-back saddles, but they're horse archers and they're very good. And the Assyrians look at this and go, fuck, we don't have horse archers. And they learned on their own how to shoot arrows from horseback.
Cool.
from looking at these They're like, and
these guys are good.
Yeah, like holy shit.
Why aren't we doing this?
Exactly, which is hard to do.
Yeah.
Like it's hard for a bureaucracy and an organization with traditions. They were as military as the Romans. They had the equivalent of like centurions.
Especially with any sort of cultural ego.
Yeah.
Which just sort of always
it took
prejudices you against actually.
Yeah. We're the best.
Yeah, we're the best. So why? Oh,
we're not going to learn from them.
Right.
And we have stone chiseled palace friezes of like the evolution of the Assyrian army. We can see it. They didn't do it deliberately. They didn't say, hey, historians, we're going to leave this here for you. We have stuff from 100 years apart, and like they get better at the horse archers because it's difficult to get good at it. And
Cool.
They weren't born in the saddle. These are farmers in Mesopotamia, right? And they learned how to have horseback archers. And there was a massive invasion, just one of these things that happens where the steppe nomads maybe fill up with people. The steppe fills up with people, and the Scythians come down in chariots.
Spill.
Spill down out of the Caucasus.
Might as well be a river flooding.
Yes. Yeah, it's a force of nature. And the steppe nomads come down, these Scythian invasions, and the Assyrians fight them. And over long campaigns, this isn't a decisive battle. This takes decades, and they eventually hold them off. It's incredible. Instead of the steppe nomads previously, when that had happened, they washed over the whole Middle East and established kingdoms like the Hittites. The Hittites were originally steppe nomads. The Mitanni, they spilled down out of the steppe. Some of them hooked right, if you're looking south, became the Hittites. Some of them hooked left, became them, and went down a little bit and became the Mitanni, distant cousins of the Hittites. And some of them made it all the way to India.
So the Hittites are successfully settled steppe nomads.
They're Indo-European.
It spilled over the lip of the bowl.
Yep. You have to think of it that way. Cut Asia in half and look at those mountains from the side. Here's the Caucasus. Here's the Ural. Well, not the Urals. What am I thinking? Down into Greece. They became the Mycenaeans. These are Indo-Europeans are a steppe people originally. Sort of. God. Spilled over the Caucasus? What's east of them? Well, the gates of Derbent and all that, I guess. Transoxiana. They crossed the Hindu Kush and made it down into fucking India. The Vedic languages, Sanskrit, they share a common ancestry with the Hittite language and the Mitanni and the Greeks and the Italians. It's incredible.
That always sort of blows my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, not anymore because I know it now, but the very fact that Indo-European is a language family. It's like, what do you mean? Sanskrit and
German?
And
what the fuck? Yeah.
What?
Or Celtic? Or Italian? Yeah.
What?
The Assyrians are not an Indo-European people. They're older, you might say, in the Middle East. They're from the Akkadians. Okay? They speak a Semitic language more closely related to Egyptian. They fight and manage to hold off in the 700s BC against these Scythian hordes who are another Indo-European, and they do not lose.
My great uncles, as another speaker of an Indo-European language.
It's astonishing. They win. They won.
Those bastards.
Yeah, all you need to win against the steppe nomads, you don't conquer them. You just need to not lose, and they don't. Okay. But one of their kings, another usurper, Sargon II, dies in battle against the Scythians, if I recall. But that core Assyrian army manages to basically hold the entire old ancient Middle East together around the 700s. So instead of another flood of steppe nomads washing over Babylon and others, it's like, oh, maybe the Assyrian army did manage to keep us alive. Hell of a deal. Or not alive, not conquered, and which provide, a lot of death and conquering. And so now they're kind of really top dog, and they control all the major trade networks. Like they're at the absolute heart of it. They have They control the mountain passes through Armenia. They control the Taurus Mountains. They control the mountains that pop over into the Iranian plateau. The Diyala River is a major caravan route, donkeys and camels going over back and forth. And so, for the first time, it looks as if the entire ancient world could maybe be unified. And not through a central plan, not through a core group of advisors and the small council of the king, but again, through an evolutionary process, but according to their own nature, they do it. The Assyrian, so basically between about 750 and 650 BC, about 100 years, there's these 4 kings. I even have them in order, I think. It's Sargon II, who dies in battle against the Scythians. His son, Sennacherib, conquers Babylon and sacks the city, which is sacrilegious. Babylon, the home of Marduk, the home of where Hammurabi was from, the core of it all. You don't sack Babylon. It's like sacking Rome as a sacred site. It's sacrilegious to do this. It's against the gods. But he sacks Babylon because they kept revolting. Because he tried not to sack Babylon, but they kept fucking revolting. And it's like, what are you doing?
Don't make me do it.
We just saved your asses against my dad saved your asses against the Scythians and the Cimmerians. What the fuck? Stop revolting against me. And by the way, my army is way more powerful than yours. You're sending me your militia dudes, and I have combined forces. I have
on top of that, stop hitting yourself, little brother.
Yeah. He sacks Babylon, and if I recall, tried to sow it with salt and flooded it because he diverts the Euphrates. And Esarhaddon, he dies. Sennacherib dies. His son Esarhaddon. It's really funny. Sennacherib left a royal indiction, Babylon will not be reborn for 100 years in cuneiform. Esarhaddon inherits this kind of mess because Babylon was also a very important economic center. He said, Dad wrote down that it wouldn't be 100 years, but if you turn the cuneiform upside down, it says 11. I swear to God. And so he's like, that means we can reestablish Babylon. And so he allows Babylon, he rebuilds Babylon because it was such an offense. It's really bad. You can't sack Babylon. It's got the tower to heaven, the Esagila, right? Esarhaddon strikes out even more. They are just, it seems at this point that they're actually fighting everybody. He's fighting the Egyptians who are trying very feebly to reconquer Canaan from the Israelites. This is now getting into the Bible. There's Necho or whoever it is, the pharaoh in Egypt, Psamtik. Jesus Christ, I can't remember. I'll get it wrong. There were some weak pharaohs who were paying the Israelites to revolt against the Assyrians.
Oh.
Or to fight, or to join. There was a coalition, the Battle of Karkar, a coalition of 10 Canaanite kingdoms, who, when the first time the Assyrians were coming west to them and is we're going to conquer you, they put together this huge coalition and this big army, and we have the list of the contribution that it wasn't Solomon, it was one of the later ones. It was, one of the petty Israeli king. What he sent, how many chariots, how many men, how many slingers, shit like that. And we have an Assyrian stele of that battle that records the Israelites from their perspective.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You can cross-check the numbers. You can
cross-reference, literally.
Cool.
Cross-reference, yeah. And it's completely different. The tone is completely different. We have the Bible, the Old Testament, and we have Assyrian stele in cuneiform. It's unbelievable. And there was a city called Lachish that the Assyrians fight against, and we have a record of that siege. And we literally have the siege ramp they used to build up to that Acropolis is literally still there. You can go and walk on it. We have arrowheads and armor and shit. I'll show you it. I'll show you the picture of the siege ramp of Lachish. This is from the 700s BC. It's as good as a Roman siege ramp. They were
How big are these siege ramps?
Oh, 50 feet wide, 120 feet tall, built up under fire while they're getting arrows and sling stones and pots of naphtha thrown at them, covered in hides, soaked in water. Big siege towers pushed up them. It's growing every day. The defenders are getting more and more desperate. It's creeping up 5 feet a day as you pour rubble and then reinforce it with logs.
Oof.
Jesus Christ.
Thanks, engineers.
They were not as advanced as the Romans because technology does advance. But an Assyrian army could have given a Roman army of the imperial era the run for its money. It's incredible. They had combined force of arms, heavy and light cavalry. No stirrups. Right? They had archers and slingers. They had mobile siege work stuff. It's unbelievable. So that's Esarhaddon and others. The penultimate one is a guy named Ashurbanipal. So Esarhaddon defeats the Egyptians. He crosses the Sinai Desert with a whole army. How the fuck do you do that? There's no water. Boats, camel caravans with canteens,
skins,
goat skins full of water. He crosses the Sinai fucking desert along the shore with like 40,000 men. Defeats the Egyptians. One of the tactics they used, the Egyptians worship cats, so they herded cats in front of their army as they came up to the walls, and the Egyptians wouldn't shoot.
No.
Yeah. That's us, yeah.
So this...
Bo-Bitty. Kitty Bo-Bitty. Oh, no. Yeah, right? So he defeats the Egyptians, but doesn't manage to seal the deal, incorporate it, right? Ashurbanipal does. He kills almost all of the nobility of Egypt. He just liquidates it, puts in a puppet. He sends his army all the way down the Nile to Thebes and loots it. All the wealth since the Bronze Age on of the Egyptian Empire, Thutmose III, all that gold. This is where the Valley of the Kings is. They obviously don't loot those hidden tombs. He sacks Thebes, the Ramesseum, all the wealth of Egypt, the priests of Amun. Sacks it, gets it all on boats, sends it back north, upstream along the Nile. He sacks Susa, the ancient capital of Elam, a kingdom older than Assyria. All of this is pouring into Nineveh. He gets Carchemish. It's a huge fucking multinational empire. From Elam, all the old cities of Sumer, Kish, Uruk, those are still inhabited. Babylon, he sacks Urartu, I think that was the name of the capital city too, whatever it is. Armenian highlands.
This is all Ashurbanipal.
See, but it keeps happening because everybody keeps revolting. Like, they're not able to build a cohesive whole. The Assyrians are so overbearing, so arrogant, and so uncompromising in their attitude. After a while, it's like, fuck, if we revolt, we should fight to the last man. Because if we don't, they're going to crucify us all. Anyway, so what's the difference? They won't even let us surrender. See? It's obey or die. So if you are even like, guys, we are going to be late on our tribute. There was a flood. It knocked out our irrigation system. We literally cannot grow enough grain for the tribute that you posted on us. Compromise? Will you work with us? No, send the grain. Okay, we're going to revolt.
Okay, I guess you have to kill us all then.
Yeah. Mass deportations. The 10 lost tribes of Israel. All that shit. That's Assyria, not Babylon. I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that. I'm pretty sure it's Assyria. The Israelites revolt. Only the tribe of Judah is left. Because the Assyrians come in and are like, we're going to scoop all you up and ship you off to like southern Babylon area. Mass deportation became heavily used state policy. They swapped everybody out, left, right, and center, north and south. The estimates are that over 4 million people were moved from A to B sometime at some point in the Assyrian Empire. You revolt against us, we're going to take your city, and we're going to scoop up 3/4 of your population and give them new land somewhere else, somewhere in Turkey. It's incredible. 4 million fucking people who had to walk to their new homeland and build homes and start plowing the fields. Oh boy. All of this was happening under a barter economy. There's no Assyrian coinage.
Ooh.
If I was to go back in time and advise the Assyrian king, that would be my one. It would lubricate trade, because you had to ship actual cattle, and you had to somehow manage this economy. How the fuck?
And when you're demanding taxes or tribute, you're demanding
real stuff.
Real stuff.
Yeah. An ingot of silver might be real nice to break into smaller chunks of silver, but how the fuck do you convert sheep wool to beef, to barley, to wine, to olive oil, to timber? Difficult. How do you economically integrate an area without coinage when it's that diverse and that huge? How do you calculate the rates of pay for a camel caravan? Yeah, I have 100 camels. I'll need 10 jars of barley a day. That's just for my workers. I'll need hay for the camels, right? What's the rate? What are you going to pay me? It's difficult. There are no Assyrian coins. It was an innovation that eluded them. And
idiots.
Yeah. Unlike the Persians, who came only 100 years later. They had coinage. The Lydians up in western Anatolia, Turkey today, they pioneered, and they were pioneering it while the Assyrians were around, and the Assyrians never fully adopted it. There's no coins with Ashurbanipal's head on it, right? There's no coins with...
Not until our Kickstarter campaign there aren't.
Hey! Right? Yeah.
The coin that never was. Sells itself.
Yeah. Like the coin of the gold coin, the really good gold coin of the Persian Empire was called the Daric after Darius. Derek.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't think there's coins with Cyrus. There's no Kyrix. But he was the original guy, right? He was the conquering hero. He took the Persians from nothing to everything. And it just... What do you do when you can't be any more brutal? When you literally run into the limits of it? What are you going to do? Dissolve us in acid? You're already torturing us to death as long as possible.
It makes me think of interpreting a piece of sheet music. And you see an F forte.
Right.
You can't play your loudest because you might see a fortissimo later. Or heaven forbid, a fortissimo,
Right.
So you got to save some because you'll run out eventually. You can't get louder. You can't at a certain point.
Yeah. And Ashurbanipal, the city of Nineveh at that point is 1 million people. It's the biggest city in the world, probably. It needs to be fed a colossal amount. You have to feed the empire. How big can the army get? How far can you push an army if every fucking year you have to go out and quell a rebellion? What do you do when the act of conquest itself of, say, Elam, you burned and sacked their capital city, Susa? It was a trade hub. All the treasure was there. That was what was keeping the local economy interconnected. So now what do? Susa is in ruins. You proudly chiseled it onto the walls of your palace, gleefully talking about how you destroyed an ancient city. It's more ancient than Nineveh. You wrecked it to conquer it. Now you're trying to integrate ruins? You have a picture of yourself. There's a famous panel, the garden party of Ashurbanipal. He's hanging out drinking wine with his wife, and I think it's the king of Elam, whatever his name was. I used to know it. His head is hanging from a tree. This is not civilized behavior. Why should the Elamites ever obey you?
It's like
how much does it cost? Go ahead.
It's like murdering your next door neighbors, but then also blowing up their lawnmower.
Yeah, and sowing their lawn with salt.
Right, but now you want the grass to grow, and it's like, oh shit,
Fuck.
It sure would be nice to have that lawnmower.
Yeah,
Whatever.
And now how much? Now the wealth is maybe going the other way. You can only liquidate something once until there's more that accumulates in order to liquidate. You're starting to behave like the Sea Peoples, the people who knocked over the Bronze Age. You're not investing. If you conquer Babylon again, the irrigation channels might silt up permanently. What are you doing? Are you building a hole or are you destroying your periphery? And so Ashurbanipal is the last great king of Assyria. There's a contested succession, civil war in Assyria. Now, your armies are too busy fighting each other.
Right.
To stop. Egypt peeled away long ago. It's too far. How do you send tribute down the fucking Nile, across the Mediterranean, into Ugarit or wherever that city is, and across the mountains to make it all the way to fucking Nineveh? The Israelites sure hate you. We have a story called Jonah where he says Nineveh will be destroyed. The Medes and the Persians don't like you. You killed their husbands and sons. And
is that when he tries to lay under the
bush?
Under the bush. And God, yeah. Well, I think we've talked about this. It's been a long time ago.
Yeah, over a year. Well over a year.
Yeah. That's a classic.
You can't keep killing the people who are supposed to be your subjects. And so a coalition of Babylonians and Medes and Scythians and Persians, among others, decides that it's been enough with this Assyria nonsense, and they knock it over, and Assyria never, ever was an empire again.
When was this?
630s BC.
Hmm.
So Ashur was sacked by the Medes, I believe, under Cyaxares. And then it was like, oh, the game is on. Now the wealth is going the other way. I better get while the getting's good. The Babylonians kind of bled the Assyrians white. It's very difficult to conquer the marshes south of Babylon, so you can always retreat into there. Nabopolassar, him and Cyaxares, if I recall, they share a blood pact. The Medes are Indo-European descendants of steppe nomads who have kind of settled down. They arrived during the Bronze Age collapse, so they've been around for good 400 years now, but they're very good horsemen. Not like the Babylonians have great infantry, not as good as the Assyrians. That complements those horsemen very well. That helps. And now even the Scythians are like getting in on the game. They're back because it's not like the Scythians weren't broken. They were just held off.
Right. Don't call it a comeback.
Right. There was this massive coalition, and now they're laying siege to Nineveh, the capital. Who's the king of Assyria now? It's some like grandson of Ashurbanipal, but there's other claimants. The Assyrians, to their credit, never capitulated. They pretty much fought to the last man. The palaces were burned. The relief the statues of conquest, the pride, the humbling of Babylon and stuff. The eyes are gouged out by the people looting it. The shame of it is unmade. Like, yes, you conquered us. Now I'm defacing the statue of Sennacherib. Burned. There's this fascinating little attempt by the final gasp of Assyria all the way in Haran. Now it's in Turkey, I think, of a guy who's like, we're going to bring it back. We're going to make it great again. He gathers the old officers, the remnants of the military.
Rally to me.
To me. The true believers in Assyria do make it there. Babylon has none of it. It's like 12 years after the sack of Nineveh.
Our Hail Mary.
Hail Mary
and if
passed,
the gods are with us, this is going to be the one.
Yep, we're going to do it. We're going to bring it back. We once ruled from with Jesus Christ. We once ruled from Elam to Carchemish. We once ruled Memphis in Egypt. We're going to do it. We're going to bring it back. Nabopolassar sends an army, knocks over Haran, and that's it. There's never Assyria ever again. From then on, it is a province of somebody else's empire. What rises for about 80 years, there's the Neo-Babylonian Empire. They kind of reform the core, but now not Egypt. This is the Babylonian captivity, another one. Well, that only lasts 80 years, and then the Medes sort of have a rise, and then that gets co-opted by Cyrus the Great. So it's crazy to think about. 650, Assyria is the ruler of the world, and the Persians are only one small tribe of horsemen among many. 550, Cyrus is going to get all of it. I mean, it's incredible. The Persians take the prize.
Take long.
Third place is actually number one. The Assyrians laid the groundwork. They built the royal roads. They integrated it all economically, but they didn't have coinage, and they were never nice about it. They were never polite, but they laid that foundation. The Babylonians kind of don't know what to do with it because they're too inward looking. They only want Babylon, really. And then the Persians take it all. Oh my God, it's incredible. So 650, Assyria's at its fucking height. 550, Cyrus the Great. It's incredible how profoundly low Assyria was laid. So yeah, we should try to make Assyria great again. Bring it back. So Nineveh is abandoned, never occupied. Some of those other cities, Arbela is now a Kurdish city, but it's got a tell in the center of it, a mound left of the remnants of mud brick that looks more like, if you take away the power lines and the satellite dishes, it's far closer to what those ancient cities would have been looked like, because even during the time of Babylon and Assyria, those cities were 4,000 years old. They had a mound at the center then.
Right.
Yeah. Far more than the idealized depictions of them that you see, in textbooks of like, oh, this is what looked like. No, it didn't. It was messy, stinky, Well, shit. That's the story of Assyria, I guess.
That's pretty good. Well, we've got some hats and some collectible coins to make.
Yeah. So coinage.
That's the takeaway.
Right. Yeah.
I wanted to ask, but I was almost, almost
should we save it for
too
later?
lazy to ask. But what's the moral? What's the lesson? But yeah, we can save it for later. Yeah. Pretend it's coinage.
I think the moral is just right there, right out in the open. Like, fuck,
Don't be too hard.
Yeah. Be polite.
Yeah. Well, I always
respect local customs.
I'm with that. Be nice.
Yeah.